I'm so glad to see you. Today we're going to continue looking at the historical accounts in the book of Genesis. But I want to tell you that our Bible verse for today comes from another Old Testament book. It's called 1 Samuel. I'll say it first, then I'll break it down for us to say, and then we'll say it together. So the Bible verse is, to obey is better than sacrifice. That's 1 Samuel 15:22. I'll say a little bit and then you say it. To obey is better than sacrifice. 1 Samuel 15:22. Excellent. Now let's say it together. To obey is better than sacrifice. 1 Samuel 15:22. So I thought before we got started with our story today, you could help me set our board up. So if you remember the last time we were together, we talked about how Adam and Eve had sinned, and they had eaten from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And at that moment, they had disobeyed God. And God disciplined them by sending them out of the Garden of Eden to protect them, because he knew if they ate from the tree of life after they had sinned, they would forever not be with him. And he always is looking for us to come back to him. And so today we're going to talk about what happens now that they don't live in the garden. And so we know that the land, God had told Adam it was going to be hard for him to garden. There were going to be briars and weeds, and things for Eve were going to be more difficult when she had children, and she would always be longing for that connection with Adam. But let's just set up our board before we dive into our story. So we've got these trees, we've used them before, and we'll put them right over here. It's the nice thing that we can use these over and over again. And I don't believe we've ever used this one before, but it's another group of trees. And remember, we've talked about that the Bible talks a lot about trees and plants, and we'll be noting that as we go through these historical accounts. And then we've got this big tree, and we're going to put it right here. And do you remember the name of the first man? Adam. Good job. What about the first woman? Eve. And when Adam and Eve left the garden, and remember they couldn't go back because God had put 2 angels at a gate, so they couldn't get back in, and that was to protect them. But they had children. They had a boy named Cain and a boy named Abel. And Cain and Abel, we don't know how far apart they were in age, but they were different. And maybe you are very different from your brothers and sisters. Maybe you like different things, and that's good. We all are born with different talents and gifts that we can use. And Cain and Abel were very different. And Cain was the oldest boy, and Cain really liked gardening. Let me show you this. This is Cain. Again, we don't know what anybody in the Bible looked like, but this is what someone thought that maybe we could use to represent Cain. So there's Cain. And Cain loved to grow fruits and vegetables. And I bet he loved hearing his parents talk about the food in the garden when they lived in the Garden of Eden. And I bet he felt good about himself when he had grown something and they had had a meal together and they said, "This is really delicious, Cain." I bet he felt good about that. And God loved that Cain was a gardener and took care of the earth like that and grew fruits and vegetables. But his younger brother's name was Abel, and Abel was different than Cain. And here's Abel. And Abel was different, and that Abel was a shepherd. He loved raising his sheep. And he probably loved taking care of his sheep and protecting them. You see, before Adam and Eve left the garden, all the animals got along with one another. They didn't eat one another. But once they left the garden, there might have been animals that would growl and snarl and might have tried to hurt the sheep. I don't know if you've ever had a dog growl at you, but I have, and I'm always a little bit afraid that they're going to bite me. And so I want to back off. And part of Abel's job was to protect the sheep from animals that could harm it. And one day God said to Cain and Abel, he wanted them to bring a sacrifice. Now when we bring a sacrifice to God, God's always looking at what our heart is. And whether we're obeying him. And so Cain and Abel, these are altars where they offered their sacrifice to God. And Cain had an altar, and I'm going to move this tree over a little bit. It's taken up a little bit more space than I planned for. And let me move Cain right here. And his altar that he was going to offer his sacrifice, and Abel's. And we'll put, here's some of Abel's sheep. And God always asks us to give our very best. And Abel brought his very best sheep. And this is what we're going to use for that. And Abel laid that sheep to offer it to the Lord on the altar. Cain brought some of his produce, fruits and vegetables that he had grown, and he offered that to the Lord. And Abel sacrificed that lamb to the Lord. But something happened. Because God could see Cain's heart, God knew that his heart wasn't right. And God was upset, and he didn't accept Cain's sacrifice. Now, it wasn't because he thought that being a shepherd was a better job. Not at all. It was Cain's heart attitude towards God. And Cain became very angry. And God challenged him and noted that he was very angry. And I don't know about you, but when I get angry with someone, a lot of times I don't want to be near them. And Cain kind of didn't want to hear what God had to say to him. And one day, Cain and Abel were alone together. And Cain, his anger burned against his brother. He was very jealous of Abel. And the Bible tells us that Cain killed his younger brother. And that is a very sad thing, and I can only imagine what Adam and Eve must have felt like when they learned of that. I bet they felt really sad. And he killed him, but he thought they were alone. But then God asked Cain, "Where is your brother?" And do you know what Cain said? Cain lied and basically said, "How am I supposed to know? Am I my brother's keeper?" But God let Cain know that he saw him kill Abel, and that Abel's blood cried out to him from the earth. And just like with any sin, God has a consequence. Not to be mean to us, but to teach us to obey so that we can have a life that is pleasing to him. And so God, for Cain's consequence or discipline, told Cain that whenever he grew his fruits and vegetables, it was going to be really hard. It was going to be harder than ever. And that he would be separated from his family. And see, sin does that a lot of times. It separates us from our relationships with people. And Cain was so grieved, sad, that he told God, this is almost more than I can bear. And God was merciful to him. God still loved Cain. And he told Cain, I will put a mark on you. And that when people see that mark, they will know not to harm you. You see, sin always has consequences. And God always calls us around telling him the truth and owning our sin so that we can be restored to relationship with him. Today's story is kind of like last time's story in that it was sad. But you know what? Even though they're sad chapters, you and I need to know that God is always working behind the scenes. We might not be able to see it, but just like he protected Cain, he's always wanting us to reach out to him. And so I want to encourage you to remember God, to ask him for help, to lean on him, to talk to him in prayer. I'm going to look forward to seeing you next time.